The applause should have belonged to me. Instead, it thundered through the Grand Meridian Exhibition Hall as Lena Cross stood beneath a rain of silver confetti, tears shimmering in her eyes while cameras flashed from every direction. "My cousin believed in me when no one else did," she said into the microphone. "This collection is dedicated to family." Family. The word struck harder than the gunshot that had ended my previous life. I knew every stitch hanging behind her, every hidden seam, every pattern cut, every impossible curve the fashion critics were calling revolutionary. Because I had created them. Once, in another life. I tightened my fingers around the invitation in my hand until the paper bent. No, not this time. I had already lived this ending. I remembered what came after the applause. The lawsuits I lost because the evidence disappeared. The investors abandoning me. The interviews calling me a bitter plagiarist. The lonely apartment where I drank cheap coffee while watching Lena become the youngest creative director in the country's history. And then, a delivery truck running a red light. Darkness. Silence. Then another chance. "Luca." The quiet voice beside me pulled me back. My assistant, Noah, frowned. "Aren't you going to stop this?" On stage, Lena accepted the International Emerging Vision Award. Behind her stood Victor Hale, chairman of Hale Luxury Group. In my previous life, I had rushed onto that stage. I had screamed. I had accused. Security dragged me away. The headlines the next morning read, "Designer loses mind after cousin's success." Not one person believed me. Not one. This life, I simply smiled. "No." Noah blinked. "No. I'll let her enjoy today." His mouth opened, closed again. "But those are your designs." "I know." "Then why?" "Because she's about to make a very expensive mistake." Noah stared as if he had never met me. Perhaps he hadn't. The Luca who had died fought with emotion. The Luca who had returned understood something far more valuable. Truth needed timing, not volume. On stage, Lena lifted the trophy above her head. Photographers shouted, "Lena, this wet. Smile. Congratulations." She looked directly at me. For one heartbeat, a tiny smile touched her lips. Triumphant. Mocking. She expected rage. Instead, I applauded. Slowly. Calmly. She frowned. Only slightly. Good. Let doubt begin early. 3 weeks earlier, when I had opened my eyes after dying, the first thing I saw had been sunlight spilling across my drafting table. Not hospital lights. Not blood. Sunlight. My unfinished sketches lay exactly where I remembered leaving them. My phone buzzed. "Lena, can't wait to see your final collection tomorrow. You're the best cousin ever, Red Heart." In my first life, that message filled me with warmth. In this one, it made my skin crawl. I checked the calendar. Exactly 26 days before the international showcase. Exactly 24 hours before she secretly copied every design. Exactly 48 hours before she convinced everyone they were hers. Everything had begun with trust. So I removed trust from the equation. I spent the entire night doing something I had never done before. Every sketch, every digital file, every pattern, every prototype. I photographed them, recorded myself creating them, uploaded encrypted copies to 3 different legal repositories, registered every original draft with timestamp authentication, embedded microscopic signature stitches into every garment. Invisible to the naked eye, impossible to duplicate once completed. Then I did something even stranger. I packed every original sample and left them exactly where Lena would find them. If I hid them, she would become cautious. If I confronted her, she would become defensive. But if I made theft easy, greed would do the rest. "Luca." Mother entered my studio carrying tea. "You've been working all night." "I have." She looked around. So many beautiful dresses. She smiled proudly. "Lena is lucky to have your help." I met her eyes. In my previous life, I had tried desperately to convince her. She never believed me. Not until years later. Too late. Now, I only nodded. She'll have everything she wants. Mother laughed softly. "You're always so generous." "No, not generous. Prepared." Exactly as before, Lena visited the next afternoon. She hugged me tightly. I brought lunch. Her perfume hadn't changed. Neither had the practiced warmth in her smile. "I heard the judges are impossible this year." "They are." She wandered through the studio. Casually. Too casually. "So these are your final pieces?" "They are." She touched one sleeve. "Amazing." I watched her eyes. Not her hands. Eyes always betrayed desire first. There it was. The calculation. The excitement. She already imagined the headlines. "You trust me enough to leave me here alone for a few minutes?" she asked. "I need coffee." Her smile widened. "I'll wait." Exactly the same words. Exactly the same trap. I picked up my wallet. "I won't be long." Outside, I never went to buy coffee. Instead, I sat inside my parked car across the street. My phone displayed 8 security camera feeds. Lena waited exactly 43 seconds. Then she locked the studio door. Her smile disappeared. She moved quickly. Professional. Prepared. Hard drives into her bag. Sketchbooks photographed. Fabric samples collected. USB drive replaced. She knew exactly what she wanted. Interesting. Even in my first life, I hadn't realized how organized she truly was. She wasn't impulsive. She had planned this for months. I watched everything. Without anger. Without surprise. Only confirmation. When she finally left, she looked over both shoulders. She believed she had stolen my future. In reality, she had stolen evidence. The launch event filled Hale Luxury Group's private showroom with journalists, celebrities, and buyers from around the world. I arrived 20 minutes early. Not as a guest. As an observer. Noah stood beside me, unable to hide his frustration. "I still don't understand." "You will. She's using your work." "I know. You could stop this before it starts." "I could. Then why don't you?" I looked through the glass wall as Lena greeted executives with effortless confidence. "Because the bigger the stage, the harder the fall." Noah followed my gaze. "You sound frighteningly calm." "I've already lived through panic. I prefer this." The music faded. Victor Hale stepped onto the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen, today we introduce a designer whose vision will redefine modern couture." Lena walked into the spotlight wearing one of my signature jackets. The audience gasped, exactly as they had before. "This collection," she said confidently, "was inspired by freedom." Freedom. Another lie. Models crossed the runway one after another. The audience stood to applaud. Fashion editors scribbled notes. Investors smiled. Orders poured in before the final look even appeared. By the end of the presentation, Victor embraced Lena. "You've just secured a global future." She smiled brilliantly. "I won't disappoint you." I quietly turned away. Noah grabbed my arm. "That's it. For today." He stared. "You aren't angry?" I was. In another life. The following morning, every newspaper celebrated Lena. A new genius is born. The future of luxury design. The woman who changed fashion. Social media exploded. Millions of views. Millions of comments. Friends I hadn't heard from in years sent messages. Most were simple. "Congratulations to your cousin." Some were cruel. "Guess talent runs in the family." I ignored everyone. Instead, I visited a quiet office overlooking the river. "Mr. Cross." An elderly solicitor stood to greet me. "I've reviewed everything." He adjusted his glasses before opening a thick folder. "The timestamps are impeccable. The recordings? Continuous. The registrations? Legally recognized in 8 jurisdictions." I nodded. "And the embedded identifiers?" He smiled for the first time. "Frankly, I've never seen anything quite this meticulous." I said nothing, because meticulous hadn't been enough in my previous life. This time, I intended to be undeniable. The solicitor leaned forward. "When would you like to proceed?" "Not yet." He raised an eyebrow. "Mr. Cross, they're already selling your work." "I know. The damages increase every day." "I know." He studied me carefully. "You're waiting." "Yes." "For what?" I looked out at the skyline. "For every counterfeit to enter the market." His expression slowly changed. Realization. If you expose them now, they lose one collection. But if you wait, they'll build an entire business on stolen foundations. And when those foundations collapse, I finished quietly, nothing survives. The old solicitor closed the file. "I understand." No, he didn't. Only someone who had died because of this betrayal could understand patience like mine. That evening, my mother called. "Luca." Her voice sounded unusually cheerful. "Lena invited everyone to celebrate." "I'm busy. She says she wants to thank you publicly." Of course she did. Public gratitude made theft look like generosity. "I won't attend." Silence. Then disappointment. "You're still jealous." I closed my eyes. In my previous life, those words had shattered me. Now they barely stirred the surface. "I'm simply working." "Lena says you're struggling." "I see." She even offered you a junior position on her team. Noah, sitting across from me, looked up sharply. I almost laughed. In my first life, I had accepted. I believed staying close would help me recover my work. Instead, I spent 2 years watching strangers praise my own designs while I thanked them for appreciating Lena's vision. Never again. Tell her. I paused. I wish her success. Mother sounded relieved. I knew you'd understand. After hanging up, Noah slammed his notebook shut. She offered you a junior job? Yes. And your mother believed it? She wanted to. He stared at me for a long moment. How are you not furious? I looked towards the city lights where billboards already displayed Lena's smiling face. Because every compliment she receives is another witness. Every contract she signs is another piece of evidence. Every interview she gives binds her more tightly to a lie. A notification appeared on my phone. Grand Meridian International Showcase. Final competition confirmed. Designers must present original craftsmanship for authentication before the live judging ceremony. I smiled for the first time in days. The final stage of history had arrived. Only this time, history was waiting for me. The invitation arrived wrapped in black velvet. No logo. No explanation. Only a single silver card. Grand Meridian International Showcase. Final authentication week. Attendance required. I turned the card over. A handwritten note covered the back. Don't disappoint me. Victor Hale. I smiled faintly. He thought he was summoning a forgotten designer. He had no idea he was inviting the owner of the very empire he admired. The Hale Tower overlooked the entire financial district. Its mirrored glass reflected a city that worshipped success. Inside, success wore expensive perfume and sharper smiles. Luca Cross. The receptionist looked surprised. Mr. Hale will see you now. As the elevator climbed, I caught my reflection in the polished steel. In my previous life, I had entered this building desperate. Today, I entered empty-handed. The evidence remained somewhere no one could touch. Victor Hale stood beside the floor-to-ceiling windows. He didn't offer a handshake. You've changed. I've been busy. I expected someone louder. So did I. His eyes narrowed slightly. I've seen your early work. So have I. He ignored the remark. Lena tells me you helped inspire her. In a way, you don't seem resentful. Resentment. That was what everyone expected. A wounded artist. A forgotten cousin. An emotional fool. Instead, I sat calmly across from him. Victor folded his hands. I'll be direct. I appreciate that. Lena wants you on her creative team. I know. She believes keeping family close is important. Of course she did. A witness under her roof was easier to control. I'll decline. Victor leaned back. You aren't interested in international exposure? I already have something more valuable. And what's that? Ownership. The room became very quiet. His expression barely shifted. But I noticed it. A tiny hesitation. He wasn't stupid. He simply lacked enough information. Ownership, he repeated. My ideas. Victor watched me for several long seconds. If you're implying something, I'm implying nothing. I stood. Thank you for your time. He spoke just before I reached the door. The authentication committee is stricter this year. I've heard. They've added forensic textile analysis. I looked back. That's a good decision. He frowned. You don't seem surprised. I read the regulations. Another lie. I remembered them. Because I had already lived through them once. Except, in my previous life, the committee never examined Lena's collection. The scandal had ended before the showcase. This time, I intended to let everything proceed. Every dress. Every interview. Every international contract. The larger the illusion, the louder reality would sound. Outside the tower, Noah hurried toward me. Well, he offered me employment. And I declined. He laughed once. I knew you would. You sound disappointed. I wanted to see his face. I chuckled softly. You'll see something better soon. The international showcase preparation consumed the city. Luxury magazines called Lena the future of couture. Television interviews followed. One evening, Noah placed a tablet in front of me. You should watch. Lena smiled brightly beneath studio lights. The interviewer admired a gown displayed behind her. Your construction techniques are unlike anything we've seen. Thank you. Where did you learn them? Lena answered without hesitation. They came from years of experimentation. I paused the video. Noah frowned. What? Look closer. He leaned in. The sleeve. What about it? She replaced the original lining. So, because she couldn't recreate the hidden stitch pattern. He blinked. She noticed? She noticed something, but not enough. I resumed the interview. Lena continued describing her creative philosophy. Every answer trapped her further. Every lie gained another recording, another witness, another date, another legal statement. She believed confidence created truth. She had forgotten truth existed before confidence. 3 days later, my solicitor called. Mr. Cross. Yes. You should see this. His office table overflowed with documents. Purchase agreements. Licensing contracts. International manufacturing deals. He tapped one thick folder. Hale Luxury has begun mass production. So soon. They're rushing to meet demand. I slowly turned the pages. Factories. Distributors. Retail chains. Millions in commitments. So many signatures, I murmured. The solicitor looked puzzled. Is something amusing? Only arithmetic. He didn't understand. In my first life, Lena sold fewer than 30 originals before I confronted her. Now, thousands of garments were entering global markets. Every single one carried my hidden signature. Not visible, not removable, not forgeable. Each sale increased damages. Each shipment deepened liability. The solicitor lowered his voice. You could stop this today. I know. Then why wait? I closed the folder carefully. Because justice should reach everyone who profited. His eyes widened. Not cruel. Not vindictive. Complete. No innocent employee would suffer. But executives who knowingly ignored verification? Investors who dismissed proper due diligence? Lawyers who silenced questions? They had all chosen profit. Choices carried prices. That night, Mother appeared unexpectedly outside my apartment. She looked tired. Older. Luca, come in. She noticed the quiet studio. Only 3 unfinished garments stood on mannequins. You've barely been working. I've been preparing. For what? I poured tea. She sat across from me. I don't understand you anymore. I know. She hesitated. Lena cried yesterday. I remained silent. She says you've become cold. Perhaps. Or perhaps I had simply stopped bleeding where everyone expected. Mother reached across the table. She's your family. So am I. Her hand froze. The sentence lingered between us. Pain flickered across her face. Not because she disagreed. Because she realized she had forgotten. The silence stretched long enough for the tea to cool. Mother withdrew her hand first. I never meant to make you feel less important. I know. You always seemed stronger. I was. And Lena needed more attention? She lowered her eyes. Yes. I remembered hearing those exact words in my previous life. Back then, I had argued. I had demanded fairness. Now, I simply accepted reality. Parents rarely noticed unequal love until consequences arrived. Mother looked around my studio. So many empty shelves. They're supposed to be empty. You sold everything? No. I let someone else take them. Her brows knitted together. What does that mean? I smiled gently. It means some lessons can't be taught with words. She left more confused than angry. For the first time in years. I didn't chase after an explanation. Meanwhile, Hale Luxury prepared for its biggest presentation. The international showcase would not merely judge beauty. It would certify originality. Winning designers would gain access to European production houses worth hundreds of millions. Losing designers would disappear. Noah entered carrying another newspaper. Lena's everywhere. The front page displayed her beside Victor Hale, the woman who will redefine global fashion. He tossed the paper onto my desk. Aren't you even a little tempted to expose her before this? No. What if she wins? I looked up from my sketchbook. She already has. He frowned. What? She has already won everything she wanted. The applause. The contracts. The attention. And now she has something to lose. Understanding slowly crossed his face. You waited until success became a prison. I nodded. Failure hurts. But falling from the top. Echoes. Across town, Lena attended a private celebration. News clips showed champagne flowing. Executives applauded. Designers congratulated her. Then my phone vibrated. A message. From Lena. Can we meet? Interesting. I replied with one word. Where? She chose the rooftop cafe overlooking the river. Exactly where we used to celebrate birthdays. She arrived wearing dark glasses despite the cloudy afternoon. Luca, you look tired. She laughed quietly. Success is exhausting. I waited. She stirred untouched coffee. You've changed. So I've heard. You aren't trying to ruin me. No. I expected lawyers. I know. She searched my face. I almost wish you had fought. Why? Because. She stopped herself. Forget it. No. Finish. She sighed. Your silence scares me. For the first time, I saw genuine fear. Not guilt. Fear. Good. She leaned forward. If you're angry, I'm not. If you want money, I don't. If you want credit, I'll receive it. She stared. What does that mean? It means truth doesn't expire. Wind swept across the rooftop. Her fingers tightened around the cup. You sound like you know something. I know many things. Luca, her voice softened. We're family. I almost smiled. So you keep reminding me. Can't we leave the past behind? The past. She thought it was behind us. Only I knew it had once been my future. I already have. What? I left the past behind. She looked relieved. Until I stood. But the truth is still catching up. I walked away before she could answer. She didn't call after me. She simply watched. For the first time since stealing my work. She looked uncertain. Back at the studio, Noah glanced at my expression. How did it go? She finally became afraid. Did you tell her? No. Then why? I placed my phone on the desk. Because guilty people hear warnings in ordinary sentences. He laughed softly. You really are different. No. I looked at the latest announcement from the international showcase. Final garment authentication begins in 48 hours. I'm simply no longer trying to save people from the consequences of their own choices. Outside, rain began to fall across the city. Inside Hale Luxury, thousands of garments carrying invisible proof were already being packed for judges, buyers, museums, and collectors around the world. None of them knew that every thread was quietly waiting to speak. The rain stopped before dawn. By sunrise, the city glittered as though nothing ugly had ever happened within it. Limousines lined the entrance to the Grand Meridian Convention Center. Television crews hurried between interview platforms, while photographers shouted for celebrities to look their way. The international showcase had finally begun. Noah adjusted his tie as we stepped out of the taxi. You really aren't carrying any portfolio? I lifted my empty hands. I brought everything I need. He looked unconvinced. You know everyone inside thinks Lena is the favorite. I know. They'll barely notice you. They don't have to. As we entered the main hall, conversations washed over us. That's Victor Hale. Lena Cross is definitely taking Designer of the Year. I heard European houses are already bidding. Their confidence amused me. Confidence built on borrowed foundations rarely lasted. Rows of glass display cases filled the enormous exhibition hall. Each finalist had a private section guarded by security officers. Judges moved slowly from collection to collection, taking notes. Lena's exhibit occupied the center of the room, exactly where sponsors wanted it. Her gowns shimmered beneath carefully positioned lights. Every visitor stopped. Every camera lingered. She stood among reporters with effortless grace. I believe fashion tells the truth, she said during another interview. Noah nearly laughed beside me. The irony. Let her finish. Every stitch reflects the creator's soul. That sentence almost made me pity her. Almost. Mr. Cross. A woman in a charcoal suit approached. She offered an identification badge. Elena Brooks, Chief Authentication Officer. I accepted the badge. I've been expecting you. Her expression remained neutral. So I've heard. She glanced toward Lena's display. We've received a confidential request from your solicitor. I know. The committee agreed to postpone review until after today's public exhibition. Thank you. It was unusual. It was necessary. She studied me carefully. Most designers would have demanded immediate intervention. I'm not most designers. No. She looked toward the exhibition floor again. I don't think you are. Before leaving, she quietly added, the committee values patience. Interesting. Perhaps someone inside finally understood what timing could accomplish. Across the hall, Lena noticed me. She excused herself from reporters and walked over. Her smile appeared flawless. Only her eyes betrayed fatigue. You came. I received an invitation. You look. She searched for the right word. Well, so do you. She laughed softly. You're impossible to read. I've had practice. A photographer suddenly rushed over. Miss Cross. He looked at me. Could we get a family photo? Lena hesitated. For one brief second. Then she wrapped an arm around my shoulder. My cousin has always supported me. Flash. Another photograph. Another lie preserved forever. The photographer thanked us and hurried away. Lena's smile vanished immediately. What are you planning? Nothing. I don't believe you. You don't have to. Her voice dropped. I know you better than anyone. No. I met her eyes calmly. You knew the man who trusted you. I've never met the man standing here. She couldn't answer. Because I was right. Victor Hale approached moments later. There you are. He shook Lena's hand warmly before acknowledging me. Mr. Cross. Chairman. I hope today's exhibition inspires you. It already has. His gaze lingered on me. You seem remarkably relaxed. I slept well. He gave a faint smile. Confidence. Acceptance. He tilted his head. Acceptance of what? Reality. Something flickered across his face. Not suspicion. Curiosity. Good. Curiosity made intelligent people ask dangerous questions. The first judging session began at noon. Visitors were escorted outside while the authentication committee entered. Doors closed. Only finalists, executives, and authorized observers remained. The atmosphere changed immediately. Less glamorous. More clinical. White gloves replaced applause. Magnifying lenses replaced cameras. Machines hummed quietly as fabrics underwent microscopic analysis. Elena Brooks addressed the room. Today's examination concerns originality, construction integrity, and material authentication. Lena stood perfectly still. Victor folded his arms confidently. I remained at the back, watching, exactly where I belonged. One judge lifted Lena's first gown. Another examined its interior seams. A third scanned thread composition. Everything proceeded exactly as expected. Then, one judge paused. He leaned closer. Another joined him. What is it? I'm seeing something unusual. Lena smiled politely. Is there a problem? No. The judge adjusted his microscope. Probably nothing. He made a small note. Barely noticeable. Barely important. Unless you knew what he had found. Noah slowly looked at me. I gave the slightest shake of my head. Not yet. The examination continued for hours. Each garment received the same treatment. Photographed. Measured. Scanned. Documented. By evening, dozens of notes covered the judge's tables. No conclusions. Not yet. Exactly as I remembered. Only this time. The evidence was stronger. Far stronger. Outside, journalists waited impatiently. News channels speculated about winners before results even existed. Inside, executives celebrated early. Victor hosted a private dinner for investors on the convention center's top floor. Crystal chandeliers reflected across polished marble floors, while waiters moved silently between tables. I attended only because my invitation remained valid. Not because I wanted champagne. Ladies and gentlemen. Victor raised his glass. To the future of Hale luxury. Applause echoed. And to Miss Lena Cross. Another round of applause. Lena smiled graciously. I couldn't have achieved this alone. She looked directly at me. My cousin taught me to believe in impossible dreams. Several executives turned toward me. One older investor smiled kindly. You must be proud. I am. The answer surprised everyone, including Lena, because it was true. I was proud. Not of her. Of my own patience. Dinner ended with contracts. New partnerships. Future expansion plans. Documents changed hands worth more than most people would earn in several lifetimes. Every signature tightened the knot. Every agreement depended on one assumption. That Lena owned the designs. I quietly memorized every executive involved. Names mattered. Responsibility mattered. When truth arrived, no one would claim ignorance. The following morning brought another round of technical inspections. This time, Elena Brooks requested private access to Lena's collection. Only committee members remained inside. An hour later, Elena sent someone to find me. Noah frowned. They're asking only for you. I expected that. We entered a smaller examination room. 5 garments lay beneath bright laboratory lights. One sleeve had been carefully opened. Tiny threads rested beneath a microscope. Elena folded her arms. Would you explain this? She moved aside. I looked through the microscope. There it was. The microscopic signature stitch. Invisible unless magnified hundreds of times. A repeating pattern hidden between structural seams. Not decorative. Not accidental. Intentional. Unique. I looked up. It identifies the original maker. One judge frowned. Can anyone reproduce it? No. Why not? Because the sequence changes every 12 centimeters. Another judge adjusted his glasses. You designed that system? Yes. When? I opened my briefcase for the first time. Inside rested a single sealed envelope. I placed it gently on the table. The answer is inside. Elena looked at the official wax seal. Legal documentation? Authenticated before these garments were ever displayed. She didn't open it. Not yet. Procedure mattered. Everything required witnesses. Everything required records. The committee chairman spoke quietly. If your evidence matches these findings, it will. This competition may face unprecedented consequences. I know. He looked directly at me. Why didn't you report this weeks ago? The room fell silent. Every judge waited. I answered honestly. Because truth should expose the entire lie. No one spoke. Then, unexpectedly, the oldest judge nodded. I understand. Others looked confused. He continued. If theft is stopped immediately, only the thief is revealed. He looked toward the exhibition hall beyond the glass wall. But if deception is allowed to mature, everyone who knowingly benefits becomes visible. Our eyes met. For the first time since my rebirth, someone truly understood. As I prepared to leave, Elena stopped me. Mr. Cross. Yes. Until tomorrow's public session. This conversation never happened. I understand. She extended her hand. I shook it. Whatever happens next. Her voice remained professional, but softer than before. Thank you for respecting the process. Outside the laboratory, Noah rushed toward me. What happened? I looked through the glass wall at Lena laughing with international buyers. They've heard the first whisper. And tomorrow, I watched workers wheel dozens of display mannequins into the grand auditorium where the final ceremony would be broadcast live across the world. Tomorrow, I said quietly, the truth will finally learn how to speak. The grand auditorium was already full when I arrived. Rows of international buyers filled the lower level. Fashion editors occupied the center. Television crews lined the walls. Above them all, suspended from the ceiling, hung the largest screen in the building. Today's ceremony would be broadcast live across 42 countries. Noah looked around the packed hall. They're treating this like the Academy Awards. They're treating it like certainty. And you? I came for the ending. Lena entered to thunderous applause. She wore a tailored ivory suit from the stolen collection. The irony was almost poetic. Victor Hale accompanied her onto the stage. He looked relaxed, confident. His company had already announced expansion into Europe. Share prices had climbed all week. Every investor expected another celebration. No one noticed the authentication committee quietly taking their seats behind the judge's table. No photographers rushed toward them. Truth rarely arrived with applause. The master of ceremonies stepped onto the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Grand Meridian International Showcase Final. Another wave of applause echoed across the auditorium. We begin today's ceremony with the International Originality Certification. The audience barely reacted. Most people assumed it was routine. Paperwork before trophies. How wrong they were. Elena Brooks rose from her seat. Unlike the glamorous presenters before her, she carried only a black leather case. No smile. No dramatic gestures. Only quiet professionalism. The International Authentication Committee has completed its technical review. Silence gradually spread through the hall. Our findings require a public statement. Victor frowned. That wasn't part of the schedule. Lena's smile stiffened almost imperceptibly. Elena continued. During examination of the finalist collections submitted by Miss Lena Cross, our forensic analysis identified repeated structural signatures embedded within every authenticated garment. Murmurs rippled through the audience. Structural signatures? Fashion reporters immediately began typing. Lena exchanged a quick glance with Victor. Confusion. Nothing more. Not yet. Elena nodded toward the enormous screen. Please display image 1. The lights dimmed. A microscopic image appeared. Thousands of enlarged threads intertwined like an intricate maze. Then red markings highlighted a hidden sequence. The committee initially believed this to be a manufacturing irregularity. Image 2 replaced the first. The same pattern. Different garment. Identical sequence. Image 3. Image 4. Image 5. Every garment contained the same invisible signature. The audience leaned forward. Even those who understood nothing about fashion sensed something changing. Elena spoke calmly. This stitching system is not commercially recognized. It appears to function as a concealed authorship identifier. Victor finally stood. What exactly are you implying? Elena met his eyes. We are implying nothing. We are presenting evidence. The room became absolutely silent. Lena stepped toward the microphone. There must be some misunderstanding. Her voice remained steady. I designed those garments. No one has accused you. Elena's answer was immediate. We are still presenting findings. Lena hesitated. That single hesitation echoed louder than any speech. She was no longer controlling the conversation. The evidence was. Elena opened the black leather case. Inside rested my sealed legal envelope. This document was submitted before today's public proceedings. Victor's expression changed. He recognized the official seals. 3 governments. 2 international intellectual property authorities. Independent timestamp certification. Not something fabricated overnight. Elena carefully broke the wax seal before cameras from around the world. Every movement appeared on the giant screen. No one breathed. She unfolded the first page. These documents contain creation records, video authentication, registered design chronology, encrypted timestamp verification, and construction methodology. Each sentence landed like a hammer. Lena's face lost color. Victor slowly turned toward her. You said. She swallowed. He didn't finish. He couldn't. For the first time, doubt entered his eyes. Elena looked toward me. Mr. Luca Cross. Please join us. Thousands of heads turned simultaneously. The applause never came. Only whispers. Who's that? Cross. The cousin. I walked to the stage at an ordinary pace. No dramatic entrance. No anger. No triumph. Just quiet footsteps. When I reached the center, Elena handed me a wireless microphone. Would you explain these signatures? I looked across the audience. Reporters, judges, buyers, students, designers, and finally, Lena. She stared at me as though seeing a stranger. Perhaps she was. The signatures, I began quietly, are invisible because they were never created for publicity. The giant screen displayed one enlarged stitch after another. They exist for one reason. I paused. So creators never lose their names. The auditorium remained silent. Not polite silence. Not respectful silence. The kind that arrives when thousands of people instinctively realize they are watching history change. I picked up the first gown from the display stand. This pattern repeats every 12 centimeters. The microscopic image enlarged again. The sequence changes mathematically. I turned the sleeve inside out. It cannot be copied after construction. One judge handed me a second garment. I pointed to another hidden section. The same identifier. Then a third. Then a fourth. Every examination reached the same conclusion. Each piece quietly declared its true creator. No speech could argue with thread. Victor finally stepped forward. His voice was low. Miss Cross. Lena looked at him desperately. There has to be an explanation. There is. She took one uncertain step toward me. Luca, I met her eyes. You already know it. She shook her head. No. You do. Her breathing became uneven. I only borrowed your ideas. No one in the auditorium moved. Someone in the front row accidentally dropped a pen. The sound echoed like breaking glass. Victor stared at her. What did you say? She covered her mouth. She hadn't meant to speak aloud, but panic had loosened the words. She tried again. I improved them. The silence ended instantly. Gasps. Whispers. Hundreds of cameras fired at once. Journalists stood from their seats. Victor's face hardened. You told me everything was yours. You signed legal declarations. I thought. You thought. His voice cracked through the auditorium. You built an international company on theft. Lena looked toward me one final time. There was no arrogance left. Only fear. Luca, I'll give everything back. I never asked for it. I'll apologize. That won't change the truth. Tears filled her eyes. We're family. The words no longer carried power. They were never enough to stop you. She collapsed into the nearest chair. Not dramatically. Not theatrically. Like someone whose strength had quietly disappeared. Elena Brooks stepped forward again. The International Authentication Committee has reached its final decision. She unfolded another document. The collection submitted under the name Lena Cross is hereby disqualified. The International Originality Certification is revoked. All competition results associated with these works are declared void. Every sentence erased another layer of Lena's carefully built success. But it wasn't over. Not even close. A representative from the Intellectual Property Authority approached the stage. He carried another folder. Mr. Victor Hale. Victor accepted it slowly. What is this? Formal notice. Regarding unauthorized commercial distribution. He opened the first page. His expression froze. I recognized that look. It was the same expression I had worn in my previous life when I realized I had lost everything. Except this time, it belonged to someone else. The representative continued. Pending judicial review. All international sales are suspended. Current inventory is subject to seizure. Royalty payments are frozen. Manufacturing licenses are temporarily revoked. Murmurs swept through the audience like a rising storm. Investors began checking their phones. One executive suddenly stood. Our stock. Another interrupted him. It just dropped. Victor closed his eyes briefly. The empire he had celebrated 2 nights earlier was collapsing in real time. Not because I attacked it, because it had been built upon a lie. A journalist shouted from the audience. Mr. Cross, why didn't you expose this immediately? Hundreds of cameras turned toward me. I answered without hesitation. Because truth deserves to be complete. Another reporter called out. Weren't you angry? I was. So why stay silent? I looked once toward Lena, then toward the audience. If I had interrupted her on the first day, people would only remember an argument. But when a lie is allowed to stand long enough, it eventually introduces everyone who chose to believe it. The auditorium fell quiet again. No applause. No cheering. Only understanding. Consequences had spoken louder than revenge ever could. At the edge of the stage, security officers quietly approached Lena and Victor to escort them into a private conference room where investigators were already waiting. Neither resisted. Neither looked at me again. As they disappeared behind the closing doors, I realized something unexpected. The anger I had carried into my first death had finally vanished. The morning after the showcase, the city looked exactly the same. Traffic still filled the streets. Coffee shops still opened at 7. Office workers still hurried toward trains with paper cups in their hands. Only one thing had changed. The headlines. Every newspaper displayed a different variation of the same story. Global fashion scandal shocks industry. Stolen collection exposed live. Unknown designer reclaims his work. Noah walked into my studio carrying a stack of newspapers nearly half a meter high. You've become famous overnight. I smiled without looking up from my sketchbook. Not famous. Recognized. He dropped the papers onto the table. They're calling you a genius. They're calling yesterday's events a miracle. They're calling you the future of fashion. I continued drawing. He laughed. Seriously? You aren't even reading them? I've already lived through the opposite. What people say today, they'll say something different tomorrow. Noah leaned against the drafting table. So what now? I finished the line I had been drawing before answering. Now I design. He blinked. That's it. That's why I started in the first place. The phone rang constantly. Television interviews. Magazine covers. Luxury brands. Universities. Documentary producers. Every hour brought another invitation. I declined almost all of them. Not because I feared attention. Because attention was loud. Creation was quiet. And I had spent too many years forgetting which one truly mattered. 3 days later, Elena Brooks visited my studio. She carried no legal documents this time. Only a small wooden box. I hope I'm not interrupting. Not at all. She looked around the room. Unlike before, the shelves were filling again. Fresh sketches. New fabric swatches. Half-finished prototypes. You started over quickly. I never really stopped. She placed the box on the table. The committee asked me to deliver this personally. Inside rested a silver medallion engraved with the International Authentication Committee's seal. Beneath it lay a handwritten letter. For outstanding contribution to creative integrity. I looked at Elena. I wasn't expecting this. We know. She smiled faintly. That's probably why you deserve it. There was an awkward silence before she spoke again. I've worked in authentication for 17 years. I've seen plagiarism, forgery, counterfeit collections. But, she looked directly at me. I've never met someone willing to sacrifice immediate victory for complete truth. I considered her words. It wasn't sacrifice. No, it was trust. In what? Consequences. She nodded slowly. I think I'll remember that. As Elena prepared to leave, she hesitated at the doorway. There's one more thing. Yes. The committee unanimously voted to rename the structural authorship guideline. I looked up. They're calling it. She smiled. The cross standard. For a moment, I couldn't speak. Not because of pride. because of relief. In my previous life, my work had disappeared beneath someone else's name. Now, my name would protect designers I would never meet. Perhaps that mattered more than any award. That evening, I visited my father's grave. The cemetery overlooked a quiet lake where autumn leaves drifted across still water. He had died years before my first life ended. But I remembered standing here after losing everything. I remembered apologizing. I'm sorry. I wasn't strong enough. Today was different. I placed fresh white lilies beside the headstone. I finally stopped fighting the wrong battle. Wind stirred through the trees. No answer came. None was needed. For the first time in both lives. The silence felt peaceful. A week later, Victor Hale requested a meeting. No lawyers. No board members. Just the two of us. The location surprised me. Not Hale Tower. A small independent cafe tucked away on a quiet side street. When I arrived, he was already waiting. He looked older than he had 10 days earlier. Not physically. Emotionally. The confidence that had once surrounded him like armor had disappeared. I appreciate you coming. I sat across from him. You wanted to talk. I did. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Finally, he exhaled. I made a mistake. You trusted the wrong person. No. He looked down into his untouched coffee. I stopped asking difficult questions. That answer caught my attention. He continued. When Lena presented the collection, everyone wanted to believe. The investors. The media. My own executives. He gave a tired smile. And so did I. I remained silent. I ignored the small inconsistencies. The missing drafts. The incomplete development records. The rushed explanations. He laughed bitterly. I called them signs of genius. Were they? No. They were signs I didn't want the truth. The admission carried no excuses. Only honesty. He reached into his briefcase and removed a thin folder. I've resigned as chairman. I looked at him quietly. The board accepted it yesterday. He slid another document across the table. Hale Luxury will establish an independent foundation for young designers. No ownership clauses. No exploitative contracts. Every submission independently verified. I opened the first page. The foundation's name appeared at the top. The original Maker's Initiative. Below it was a handwritten note. Inspiration, Luca Cross. I closed the folder. You don't owe me this. No. Victor's expression softened. I owe the industry. Another long silence settled between us. Then he smiled for the first time. A strange thing happened after the scandal. What? I finally remembered why I entered fashion. To create beauty. Not headlines. I stood. So don't forget again. I won't. As I walked toward the door, Victor spoke one final sentence. You know, if you'd screamed that first day, I would never have believed you. I looked back. I know. Outside, afternoon sunlight stretched across the pavement. The city still bustled around me. People hurried to meetings. Children laughed outside a bakery. A street musician played a violin beneath a row of maple trees. Life had never paused for my suffering. Now, it no longer needed to. Back at my studio, Noah stood surrounded by bolts of fabric. So, how did it go? He apologized. And I believed him. Noah raised an eyebrow. That's surprisingly generous. It isn't generosity. It's recognizing the difference between guilt and growth. He smiled. I think you've changed more than anyone. I looked around the studio. New sketches covered the walls. Not copies of old dreams. New ones. Entirely my own. For the first time since my rebirth. I wasn't creating to prove someone wrong. I was creating because I loved the work itself. Outside the window, evening light settled across the city. Inside, I picked up a fresh piece of chalk and drew the first clean line of a collection that belonged only to the future. Winter arrived quietly. Not with storms. With invitations. Museums requested my work. Universities invited me to lecture. Independent designers wrote letters describing how the newly adopted cross standard had protected their creations from theft before contracts were signed. One afternoon, Noah entered my office carrying a thick bundle of envelopes. You should read these. I've already seen enough paperwork. They aren't legal documents. They're thank you letters. I accepted the stack. The first came from a 20-year-old student in Milan. I thought powerful companies always won. Your story taught me that evidence matters more than influence. The second arrived from Seoul. Our studio has started using hidden authorship markers because of your work. Another came from Sao Paulo. You never met us, but you changed how our team protects original designs. I placed the letters carefully inside a wooden drawer. No trophies. No framed headlines. Just handwritten words from strangers. Somehow, they felt heavier than every award I had ever imagined winning. My new collection was unlike anything I had created before. Not because the designs were more complicated, because they were honest. No obsession with proving genius. No desperate need to outperform anyone. Each garment reflected peace rather than pain. Noah walked slowly around the mannequins. This doesn't look like your old work. It isn't. It's lighter. I stopped designing against someone. He smiled. And started designing for yourself. Exactly. Several weeks later, Elena Brooks visited again. This time she wasn't carrying official documents. Only an invitation. The International Council would like you to deliver this year's keynote address. I almost laughed. Me? They voted unanimously. I'm a designer. They know. They don't want a celebrity. They want someone who understands responsibility. I looked at the elegant invitation. My first instinct was to refuse. Then I remembered something my father used to say. Knowledge hidden helps only one person. Knowledge shared. Protected many. I'll accept. Elena smiled. I thought you might. The conference hall was smaller than the showcase. No cameras chasing scandal. No screaming reporters. Only designers. Students. Professors. People who genuinely loved creation. I stepped onto the stage carrying no prepared speech. Only a single notebook. The audience applauded politely before settling into silence. I looked across hundreds of faces. I've been asked many times. How I won. A few people leaned forward. My answer disappoints them. Soft laughter spread through the room. I didn't. I lost once. I lost everything. No one interrupted. The second time, I simply stopped trying to defeat people. I started protecting the truth. I held up a length of plain white thread. This. The giant screen enlarged it. Looks ordinary, but hidden inside ordinary things can be extraordinary honesty. I placed the thread back onto the podium. Talent creates beauty. Integrity allows beauty to survive. The hall remained completely still, not because my words were dramatic, because they were simple, and simplicity often carried the greatest weight. When I finished speaking, the audience stood. Not immediately. One person first, then another. Soon the entire hall was on its feet. The applause sounded different from the applause Lena had once received. This applause wasn't celebrating illusion. It honored truth. After the conference ended, a young designer approached nervously. Mr. Cross. Yes. I wanted revenge. He couldn't have been older than 23. My mentor stole my work. I'm sorry. I read about you. He hesitated. I was planning to destroy him. I waited. What should I do? For a moment, I saw myself from another life. Angry. Desperate. Ready to burn everything. I answered carefully. Protect yourself. Document everything. Set boundaries. And, if he destroys himself, don't stop him. The young man looked confused. You mean forgive him? No. I smiled gently. Don't become him. He nodded slowly. I wasn't sure he fully understood. Neither had I. Not until I lived twice. Spring returned almost exactly 1 year after the International Showcase. The city celebrated its annual design week with exhibitions scattered across galleries, theaters, and converted warehouses. This time, I wasn't attending as a victim or as a scandal. I was simply another creator sharing his work. My exhibition occupied a modest corner of the Contemporary Arts Pavilion. No flashing lights. No oversized banners. Just carefully lit garments displayed with sketches showing every stage of their development. Visitors lingered longer than I expected. They weren't just looking at finished pieces. They were studying the process. Children pointed excitedly at early drafts. Young designers photographed construction notes. Older craftsmen smiled quietly as they recognized techniques often ignored by modern fashion. One elderly tailor stopped in front of a display and remained there for several minutes. When he finally turned toward me, his eyes were damp. People don't usually show the unfinished work. They should. He nodded. It reminds us that masterpieces begin as uncertain lines. After he left, I found myself staring at my earliest sketch in the exhibition. The pencil marks were uneven. The proportions were imperfect. In another life, I would have hidden those flaws. Now they felt honest. Near closing time, Noah approached carrying 2 cups of coffee. You've had visitors all day. I noticed. He handed me a cup. No interviews. No scandals. No legal questions. Just people talking about design. I smiled. It feels strange. It feels right. We stood together watching visitors move through the gallery. No one recognized the moment as extraordinary. Perhaps that was its beauty. Peace rarely announced itself. It simply arrived. As evening settled, the gallery emptied. The lights dimmed one by one until only my final display remained illuminated. Inside the glass case rested the first jacket from the collection Lena had stolen. Not the counterfeit. The original. Beside it was a small plaque. Original design by Luca Cross. Recovered through authenticated authorship verification. Nothing more. No mention of betrayal. No accusation. No explanation of scandal. History had already delivered its judgment. The work no longer belonged to the conflict. It belonged to the future. I switched off the final light and stepped outside. The city stretched before me beneath a sky painted in deep orange and fading blue. Cars passed. Laughter drifted from nearby cafes. Somewhere in the distance, a violinist played a familiar melody. I paused on the museum steps and breathed in the cool evening air. In my first life, I had believed justice meant making everyone admit I was right. After my rebirth, I learned something quieter. Justice wasn't forcing the world to recognize my voice. It was ensuring the truth could speak for itself. The truck that had ended my first life had given me another beginning. Not to seek revenge. Not to rewrite every wound. But to make one different decision when betrayal arrived. I chose patience over panic. Preparation over accusation. Evidence over anger. And because of that choice, I never needed to destroy anyone. The lie carried its own ending. The truth carried its own future. I turned away from the museum and walked into the evening without looking back. For the first time across both lives, I wasn't leaving something behind. I was simply moving forward.